Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors, America's only daily outdoor TV show. Your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. I'm Winston Chester. Glad you're on this Monday morning. We have some special guests here. I'm actually going to do the weather and let them do the show. That's a win-win for all of us. But let's take a look at our weather, brought to us by Gulf Coast Air Conditioning. Drew Pollard and hard-working crew up here in Southport. We're looking at a high today of 66 and a low of 54. Water temperature is 66 degrees at the end of the pier. Take a look at our Monday moon forecast. We're looking at, brought to us by Mountain Dew. Get out and do. We're looking at a full moon. It's going to be the 19th. Today's the 13th, so we're waxing up. We've got a full moon coming up in 5 or 6 days. Looking at our tide chart brought to us by Kent Forest Lawn right here on 23rd Street. We had last week some really good strong tides. Today we're in a neap tide. It's going to start building back up in a couple of days, but not a lot of tidal flow today. And we're looking at a pretty decent wind, but not a lot going on as far as the weather. And we're you just want to, when you get out there, you want to be real careful always, not knowing what's going to happen at all. So let's go on. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back with our special guest host this morning. Okay?
Surprise! We snuck in the back door to take over for Winston here, and we're getting better because we got Winston doing our introductions now. We don't have to fool with all that.
You don't have to
anymore.
pay us as much.
No, he doesn't pay us as much. Did you ever cash any of those checks?
They wouldn't cash.
Yeah, don't try. All right. Well, anyway, good morning. Good morning. We're just wanted to come in, and we've had two very different trips to East Bay. That one very successful and one not so much. Basically, same conditions. So I don't know that if it was us or whatever it was, but a couple of weeks ago, we went to East Bay one afternoon on an incoming tide. Didn't have hardly any wind that day, and just got on them from the time we got there.
Right. One of the trips, and of course I was just looking at the videos, October the 14th and November the 18th, and so the water was very similar. It was a little dirtier back in October, but we had an incoming tide, and it seems like every year, later and later, that the fish are on the flats longer. Now, I don't know because we've just had warmer weather, but now, I guess, well, one of the ones we went the other day was in December.
Yeah, I think one before
so
that, the 8th.
Very seldom do I remember in the 45 years that I've been fishing here, 55, that we were able to fish on the flats in December. Most of the time, the fish have gone up into the bios, and the water has gotten cool enough, but it's been so warm during the day, and we only had a little bit of cold weather where it might have moved them up into those bios, but they were still on the flat, which was unusual. And I'm not going to blame global warming, but
Well, we haven't made a trip to Appalachia yet.
No.
The whole Goat Island thing. It's just there's no reason to go right now. The fish aren't migrating up in there, so But hey, we had a fantastic day. We had 2 fish in the first 15 minutes that were keepers probably.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, I think that, and this has played well for Bill and I over the years a lot. You need to have a bottom machine that gives you the temperature of the water. Very, very important. How many times have we been fishing where, especially this time of year, where the water temperature will be X, and then we'll move into an area where it's a degree or two higher, there's the fish.
It will
Just
last
about all the time.
Yeah.
So when you're not sure, when you're kind of in limbo between, do I fish out in the flats or do I go up in the bio? If it's the same temp, the really weird part is when the bios aren't any warmer or colder than the bay. Then they're spread out, you're gonna have a tough day. But you need to check that, because if you're in doubt where you haven't had a long period of time where the weather has stayed cold enough to move them and push them up into the bio, seeing that difference in temperature. Remember the other day when we went, we kept saying 63, 63, 62, 63, and then I'm asking him, he looks on the thing and goes, 65. Oh, I got a hit.
We came around it, and I don't know why. I mean, we had worked our way through the marsh,
Right.
and you know, had enough water, but then all of a sudden we came to an area, call it a bio inside the marsh, and as soon as we came around the corner, it was 2 degrees warmer. And that was the last trip, which was not a good trip.
It was tough.
But, you know, we forgot the net. We didn't have the pendant for the power pole. I wasn't there long before I had a big wind knot, because it was this last time, it was pretty windy. Yeah. And then I struggled with it, with all that light line, trying to put on the new leader and get everything set up. And so bites were few and far between. And when I finally did get a pretty good strike and I went to set the hook, it snapped at the knot. So some of the wind got a hold of that 10-pound Power Pro, and I mean, you know, the 10 diameter Power Pro, and it just was one of those days. You know, we lost 2 or 3 plugs on for whatever reason, but it just, and finally when we got to that one place, I was fishing the Z-Man. Had you switched by then, or were you still?
Yeah, I was throwing the soft plastic.
Yeah, and it seemed to be the thing that. Well, we weren't in a lot of water back there. There was still not a lot of water, but we did wind up catching, I think, 1 redfish and 5 or 6 trout.
That's about it.
Maybe 1 or 2 of them, but
we had a couple that were keepers. And
it was better than, you know, it was better than anything else we would have been doing. So, you know, not complaining. But I wanted to go ahead and mention right now, how much time we got, Jeff? Yeah, I'm getting good at this. We got 1 minute. Major fishing times for today is. They're not really that major, but 6:30 to 8:30 a.m. and then 7 to 9 p.m. But the activity is slow. You know, as Winston said, we have a lot of water moving. You got a moon coming up, and it's just, you know, but hey, if you have the opportunity to go, you know, we've caught fish when it should have been just terrible, you know. And
true.
We've not caught anything when it should have been perfect. So, hey, the opportunity to go is the opportunity to go. So we're going to go ahead and take this first break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So that was the trip that didn't go all that well. But the trip before that, which was what, 2 weeks before that?
Yep.
Water temperature may be a little bit warmer, but not a lot. And so we pull up, and Greg's got the Paul Brown on, which...
Yeah,
do you remember?
I was throwing Paul Brown.
The white one?
Redhead.
The redhead. Okay, yeah, the redhead. The water was still a little bit, it wasn't really dirty, but it was tinted. You know, it had that greenish tint to it. And so Greg used the redhead with the glitter body. And the minute we pulled up, I mean, he had 2 fish that would have gone in the boat in the first 15 minutes, you know, sitting outside. And instead of the pearl-colored Z-Man jerk shad, I put on one that was, I don't remember what they call it, but it's a green and a muted white color to more match the water, which I hadn't fished with in a while. White's usually my go-to, but I put that on, and we were catching them both ways, you know. So we worked around the outside and then went up in the marsh, you know, a little ways, but there still wasn't really enough water. But looking, we didn't see any activity. I mean,
no,
see any bait, to see anything.
Right. I mean, we threw several times, and this time of year you don't get a lot of tide movement normally, and so the water's not moving as much. You got to be careful when you try to slide up into these areas too. Make sure you got incoming tide, because I've been stuck before, and it's not fun getting out, especially.
We have gotten out and pushed on more than one occasion.
Yeah, and I'm not sure our tickers can take that anymore. So, especially when your feet get about this far down into the muck, and it's not fun. So be careful with that. But you have to. There's a pattern. You never know what it is, and hopefully you can go out there. This time of year's tough too because it gets dark so doggone soon, and we got to run, 15, 20 minutes from the house with the boat to get to the area, the general area where we fish, and you don't have that much time. So you want to be able to figure out what the pattern is and where they are. That's why it's so important to look at the temperature and see where those changes are. We found them that day. In fact, we were going to go around a different spot. It wasn't deep enough to get into where we wanted to go. So we went to this other spot, established that pattern, and he put it on me. Normally, I
wasn't going to say that. Well, I was.
He put it on me.
I was.
Very seldom do I brag about kicking his butt when we fish, and we don't. And let me tell you something. If I catch a fish, fishing with him is no different than I was fishing with my dad. As long as we get fish, I'm going to take credit for it because I'm running a boat. Or I'm going to take credit for catching it in my boat.
Yeah.
So, but it's good to fish with me because I know when I tell him hit that spot, I didn't hit it. We just have a good pattern, and you want to fish with people that understand and know what they're doing. Try to get somebody that can fish at your same level because you got to be productive, and it gets dark so fast. So, but
well, I appreciate being compared to your dad because between the two of us, we've taught you as much as we can. So you've really caught up. But anyway, we stayed outside, and the other thing about it is which is really true, and that's why we don't talk about it too much. It doesn't matter who's catching the fish.
Right.
It really doesn't. So typically we're fishing two different things. Either Greg's going with the Paul Brown and I'm bouncing the gulp around, and I'll use some swim baits, and then Greg goes from soft to hard baits and those kind of things. So we're very rarely are fishing the same thing unless it's just glaringly, how it's going to be that day. But so we made the adjustment. We didn't go inside. So we stayed outside. Nothing was really happening there. So we kind of figured we needed more water. So there's a couple of places, but a particular place that we ran around to where there's a nice deep trough. I was average 2.5 foot deeper than when the rest of the water around there, maybe. So we went around to that trough, and Greg was able to keep it. We didn't have a whole lot of wind blowing. And don't forget the off either, because man, without it, you're not going to last very long. And Winston's sitting back there nodding his head. Remember that day we got run out of West Bay, back there catching fish, and we were swarmed. There was nothing blowing. We were up Doyle Bayou, I think, and both of us just looked at it like, this isn't worth it anymore. This was bad. But anyway, so we got around there without much wind, and Greg kept the boat where, with the Paul Brown, he could fish the little bit deeper side, and I could fish the more shallow side on the rise. And we did, and I may have had the edge a little bit that day, but we caught a bunch of fish. We caught redfish. We caught trout. We just, the intent was did we go in on that side, or did we go around and try it one time?
We were around and slid in.
Yeah, we went around, went in there, but where they should have been, they weren't. The bait wasn't in the marsh. We had plenty of water to get in, and just the bait wasn't in there. So, you can fish it to death because it's perfect conditions. But if the fish aren't there, you're gonna need to, you need to reach back in the bag and go find some place where they're at.
Yeah.
So
patterns are, you hopefully by the time you have to leave, you figure out the pattern, and sometimes you don't. But one thing that's really important, especially this time of year, and if you don't have a power bowl, have an anchor. If you hit a spot and both of you get a strike, don't keep going. Kind of milk it a little bit. slow down, and spat that area well before you travel. And especially, I know I do that when I'm forced to go by myself because he can't go, or it's just so if you don't have a power pole, have an anchor, but don't leave a place that especially if you both had strikes, milk it a little bit before you move, and especially if it's windy.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be in another time zone by the time you bring that fish in, and then you go, whoa, I wonder if there's anything back there. Don't wonder, fish it.
All right, good point. Look, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take this break and be right back. Hey, welcome back. Before we continue on that trip, I wanted to do the river readings. Apalachicola is 6.2 and holding steady, and Choctaw is at 5 feet and it's holding pretty steady, and we may see that increase some with some of the rain that we had. We had just north of here, but I've had several comments about the show that Bill and I did, speaking of the river, about catfish and using that strawberry chicken. And I mean, I was in Vernon, where Dalton and I get all our morely his deer processed, the guy we've been using for years, and I'm sitting here now, can't think of his name, but he was watching the show, big catfisherman and an outdoorsman up there, and now I'm gonna kick myself because I can't remember, but I'm gonna say hello anyway because he watches the show every morning. But there's just get comments all over the place, and on our shows too. And to finish up where we were, we had gone back inside before we left and worked that, and then there wasn't anything in there. But what we wind up keeping, we kept like 5 keepers and 1 over 20. And the rest we threw back, and I think we probably had better than 3 limits of keeper trout.
Correct.
And then had several redfish mixed in with that. But the Paul Brown or the jerk bait at this time of year, you got to slow it down, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. When the colder the water is, the slower you got to work the bait. The fish, they get lethargic. Now, once you hook them, they'll wake up. But don't be surprised too when you're throwing some of these twitch baits and or a mirror lure, if you get an area that's barren, where you can into the sinking mirror lure, and working it ever so slowly, and sometimes you'll just get that little, like he's bumped into it. There you go, oh, whoa, and there's a fish on there. So it's touchy because, am I hooked up in the grass? Go ahead and test those bumps because it doesn't hurt. And there was a trip that I took a few weeks ago where the water was so dirty, and I was hooking fish in the dorsal, in the back, close to their excretion point. I mean, the top of the head, everywhere, because the water was dirty, and I'm twitching this bait.
And they're coming after the vibration.
They're coming after the vibration. I can't see them. They see it. Or they can hear it. But I hooked fish in the craziest places, and but it's really important to slow the bait down in the wintertime because they're, it's
and as you're moving it, pause,
Yeah.
and that's where a lot of the strikes come from, and that's why they're not, it's just killing it, taking it out of your hands. And then also fishing the soft bait, as you're bouncing that along, just remember they can pick it up coming towards you. So if you start to bounce and you don't feel anything, it happened to me the other day, you get that slack out real quick and go ahead and reset his jaw. But it doesn't, just because it's a softer bite or you feel it pick up, that's not an indication of the size of the fish. And talking about that, and Winston reminded me, we get a lot of questions about is we're both fishing Power Pro, And and of course the rods, we can go into the rods all day long, but you need a rod that's sensitive most of the time with a fast tip, but with a pretty good spine to it, maybe a medium action, so you can feel all that. But the line and the rod are your connection. And when I'm throwing those soft baits, you know, I'm using a 10-pound Power Pro, which is, what is it, 3 or 4 pound diameter. It's a small line. And also, if we're not around where we know there's a lot of oysters and things like that, I'm going to use a 10-pound leader on it, which I put together, and so does Greg, with, you know, a uni to uni. You tie the uni knot on both ends to put your leader on, because you have to have that stretch. Depending on what you're fishing, anything from 18 inches to 2.5, maybe, just
very important. You got to have that. You cannot tie your Power Pro to, you can, but to your lure, because without that stretch, you're going to lose, especially good fish.
It's strong, it's durable, but a direct pull, a direct pull, it's going to pop on you every time. And plus, it's really hard to tie a correct knot directly to the power pole. I mean, directly to the line like
all
that.
All kinds of ways and all kinds of knots right here on this thing on YouTube.
Jeff's waving and jumping up and down. Thanks for being here. Have a great day, and God bless.
Thanks for watching America's only daily outdoor TV show, Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester, featuring hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.